Again.
Right. So, hi guys, I'm Heather Makar,
And I am Seth Leaf Prusansky.
and today we're going to be talking about intuitive solutions, how to connect with your intuition, how intuition has been used historically all the way from caveman times, and how we can apply it to use for our personal solutions in our daily life and also to help the world to find solutions for our overarching problems. Um, so, Seth, what are some thoughts that you have about how we've historically used intuition?
Well, to speak on such a grand scale level of stuff, requires a lot of different perspectives. But ultimately, I kind of think for what we're facing right now as a species in this day and age, there seems to be a prevalence of people who are stuck in their heads. So we're stuck in our heads, we're stuck in our thoughts, and we're kind of in this place where we're almost imprisoned by our own mental capacity. So intuition and feeling and things like that are kind of not really, we're not used to working with that because it's such a mental, cerebral world. So it's kind of getting out of your head, getting back down into your heart, into your body, and feeling reality instead of just thinking about it.
Yeah, we do a lot of thinking, and it's a lot of just dealing with our day-to-day activities, and we don't do a lot of, what does this feel like? What do I really think about this? It's a very busy process that we have going on in the world.
Yeah, and at the utmost extremes of it, there's this whole concept of critical thinking that, people have taken thought and being in the mind to these levels where, it's amazing in a lot of ways, but their ideas of it are really kind of cut off from a greater whole and a greater reality. And because of that, it's kind of segregated thinking itself into a very compartmentalized format where everything is holistic in nature. Everything is unified and tied into other things. So how can you just focus on one aspect without neglecting the others? So I think kind of what the goal is to learn how to think thoughts with a more feeling oriented perspective into it, because it adds a whole new dimension to your thoughts and it gives you the ability to perceive things in a way that's much more real.
Yeah, not only more real, but I don't want to say less personal, but more global, more overreaching, because a lot of times people are so stuck in their daily commute to work, take care of the kids, all the minutia of daily life that they forget that every other person is having their own experience and their country is having experience and the planet is having experience. So what is their piece in that? And I think a lot of people miss out on that because they don't have time to put thought into that direction, or they don't make time, or they don't think to think of these things because we're not really conditioned to.
Well, that's it. You said the word right there, condition. And it's almost like that's what we're working against. There's all this conditioning that we kind of didn't really know that we were being subjected to throughout our lives. And that conditioning itself, it's like you said, it's a personal thing. It's in your family, it's in your culture, in your state, society, country, whatever. All those different things affect us to the degree where we kind of just dwell in that space, oblivious to a greater reality, both that exists beyond the stratosphere of our planet and or one that exists within us.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really consider things from that perspective, I think it's obvious that we need solutions that will help bring us to a point where we feel connected to a greater inner and outer reality, because we do feel separated from each other. We are destroying, we act like we are separated and we destroy ourselves, each other, the world, nature, all of it. And it's really just, it's illogical, it's irrational, and it's insane. It's a true insanity when you look at it from that perspective. So.
It is. We're all leaves on the same tree of life, and it like imagine a tree with a leaf attacking the next leaf. It seems silly. Imagine a flower getting angry because the next flower over is blooming sooner than they are. It's I think people look outside themselves for validation a lot to get confirmation that you're doing okay, you're doing the right thing, and they don't take a second to think, do I think I'm doing the right thing? Do I like what I'm doing? Do I like the person I'm becoming? And I think it leads people down paths of not doing fulfilling things in their lives and not taking that broader perspective. They just want to be the cog that fits in that wheel.
Yeah, you said it exactly. I mean, we're so conditioned to seek validation from others around us that we have become all but oblivious on how to find that validation from ourselves, that authentic empowerment that really is a natural, inherent function of our own existence. But we're seemingly so out of touch with that it's obvious what's going on. It's clear that this is a huge missing component to why we suffer, both as individuals and as a species, and also more than that, why we're causing so many other species and individuals to suffer as well.
Absolutely. Oh, it's awful. So, as an adult who's grown up with this, with all the conditioning, with all the, wanting to fit in, wanting the external validation, as an adult, what would you tell someone how to get started? They're like, someone who's already thinking, maybe I don't like the way my reality is going. Maybe I don't like where my life is going. I don't like my job. I don't like the surroundings of my life. What would you tell them to get started? Like, how would they start using their intuition to guide how to build a new life?
Well, first you have to come to terms with it yourself and recognize that there's a reason to get beyond the confines of your day-to-day reality that don't serve you. And to be able to do that, you have to start looking and almost questioning your reality and kind of like admitting to yourself, like, look, I know there's more going on. I'm not fully aware of what it is right now, but I know there's something. And so in that determination, in that questioning, and in that ability to want to know what is holding you back, then you kind of set the wheels in motion and you've begun walking this road of, okay, how do I perceive more of what's going on to empower me as an individual, regardless of what anybody thinks? So really, ultimately, it's the desire to want to. And if somebody does that, doors begin to open.
That's absolutely true. You have to at least want something different. Like, even just saying, I don't know what I want, but it's not this, is enough of a start. And then that starts getting your own wheels turning and starts thinking, what do I want? How can I make this happen?
It's like a bumper sticker I see all the time. It says, it's like, if you're not outraged, then you're not paying attention.
Exactly. It's so true.
So when we begin to pay attention, it sounds silly, but attention in a way begins to pay us. And that's kind of like getting to that point where this is what it comes down to. We are perceptually very limited in what we perceive in and around us. So the goal is to expand our perception, to become more aware of the world, our world, in which we exist. The more we do this, the more we become aware of the greater world, the world as a whole, and things way beyond that even, as well as things way inside of that. So it's the desire. You have to want to do it. And it's amazing how many people are, seemingly conditioned to complacency. They don't care. They just I know a lot of people who are very bright, intelligent, they live in this world and they're fine with it the way it is. And what can you do?
Well, we're taught it from a young age. We're taught from pretty much the time we're born what success is supposed to look like, what your life is supposed to look like. Your house in the suburbs with a white picket fence and the 2.3 kids, and everything's normal, everything's fine. Don't question everything. It's all under control. The way schools are set up, you go to your next class and you do your homework at night and you go to sports and you have lunch at this time, and that every day is the same, every week is the same, every year is the same. And it conditions you for your entire life. You're like, okay, this is just a repetitive process and this is all life is. Don't be creative. Don't think. Don't make art. Don't make music. Don't think about the nature of reality, because you'll just go to church on Sunday and when you die, you'll go to heaven. And that's all. And it's just how we're taught. So, it takes pushing your own thought process to get out of that loop. You're like, is this what I want? Is this what reality is? Do I even like my job? Do I even care that I'm making $100,000 a year or whatever it is? It's wondering what is really important to you instead of what other people told you is important to you.
I love, yeah, you just said something really important. It's expanding your own thought process. It's opening up. I call it expanding the inner and outer edges of your thought process. That's a wonderful place to begin because by questioning the realities that we don't normally consider, it's like you start working your ability to think and to perceive. And in doing that, it's almost like you flex your muscles of perception. And by doing that and working it and considering, the grand majesty of how our entire cosmos are held into place by unseen forces, and how also from an inner perspective, how our bodies function in such a profound and miraculous way, regardless of who we think we are and what's going on in this world, you really work your ability to perceive reality. These muscles of perception become flexed and they become strengthened. And it's amazing the results that, develop just by doing a little bit of that.
Yeah, the ability to pay attention, because we're really good at ignoring things, but when you start to pay attention to all the little things and then to all the big things, it's a dramatic shift in your perception, your attitude, the way you act in life. Like, you don't have any choice but to change your behavior when you start seeing what's going on in your world, even if it's just, you pay attention to the construction workers as you drive home from work, or you pay attention to the way the wind blows through the trees. Like, when you actually look at it instead of being like, yep, wind's blowing, but then you look and it's completely different.
And part of the reason why it becomes different just by you really trying to open your mind and consider it differently is because one thing that's happened to us that we're not really that aware of is since childhood, we've been conditioned to perceive things in a way that creates patterns in our mind. And these patterns almost form like grooves where it's kind of easy to get into that groove and continue to think along these lines that we're most accustomed to thinking in. But that sets up a trap, almost like a prison, because if you're used to thinking in a certain way, then you're also going to anticipate continuing to think in that way. And when you do that, then you further reinforce this groove, this mental groove that you're in. And essentially what it does is it closes in your mind, it closes in your thought process. And is that any really different than addiction to substance or whatever? It's not really. It's a mental addiction. And even people I know who don't drink or do drugs or do, all these crazy different behaviors are so addicted to their thought process. They're so addicted to thinking that they're this lonely human being having this isolated, separate experience, oblivious, all but oblivious to the fact that it's not who they are.
Yeah, they're so much bigger.
So much bigger. I mean, it might be who they are, but it's not what they are.
It might be the personality that's overlaying their essential nature.
It's who they become, right?
Yeah. Yeah, humans.
Who they have to be.
Humans are great pattern recognition software, and we do it from the time we're born, even before we're born, because whenever we're in the womb, our brains develop in a way that is responding to the mother's hormone balance. So if a mother feels like if there's an overdose of cortisol, if there's like too much stress in her body, if she doesn't feel like she's going to be taken care of, that stress is literally passed on to her child because that's how her child is wired. So it takes extra work for that child to overcome it. So imagine going through that for several generations, because that's what we're doing now. Our parents were probably pretty stressed because of the society they're in. Their parents were pretty stressed because that was about the Great Depression. That was a lot of immigrants were coming over. That was the industrial age. Lots of things were happening in society to make us continually stressed. So we have to take time to step back and really look at the patterns that we're enacting in our own life that are just reenacting what happened in their lives and the ones before those, so that then we can say, is this what I really want to do, or am I coming from a place of stress and fear? And when you can look at the stress and fear and not react to it, that's when you can really listen to who you are and who we are as beings.
Beautifully said, absolutely. And yeah, essentially what you're saying is it's breaking the cycle. And it's interesting because this cycle, like you said, it's not, I mean, we could potentially follow this back into antiquity. I mean, generation before generation, whatever, going back who knows when, of people passing down their thoughts, beliefs, feelings, behaviors, actions in a very kind of limited way that gets passed on from generation to generation. And it's created almost like this collective mental groove that we all become locked into. And the way to get out of that is to, like you said, become aware of it. And in doing that, by the individual who really chooses to do that, you could almost view it in a way where you're kind of healing your ancestral lines. You really are, because you're taking time to step out of something that has kind of been both mostly unconsciously, but to a degree consciously created and developed over time.
Mm-hmm.
And by shedding light on that, you really expose it to a new kind of growth. And, not to knock on this whole process of creating mental grooves or whatever in the mind, because the way it works to limit us is also a way to work to expand it and develop it. So the parts of us that hold us back can also set us free when you understand how it works and you begin to consciously work with it, as opposed to unconsciously let it dominate your thought process.
Absolutely. And I think this goes into a lot of modern habit setting beliefs, because it takes, 66 days to set a new habit or something. They've scientifically studied it. But when you observe your own patterns and when you see which ones are holding you back and which ones are helping you, you can consciously choose to create new ones. And there's tons of tools out there. There's apps for your phone. There's, different ways to journal or write checklists. But it's identifying those patterns and choosing which ones you want to keep and choosing which new ones you want to build that really help you develop as a person and help you listen to your own inner voice, that inner guidance or the intuition that we're talking about, so that you can fully develop yourself into who you want to be and connect with, it sounds pretentious, but the universal consciousness, because you're part of the universe and you're connecting with the part that you play.
It doesn't sound pretentious at all. I mean, it might sound that way to people who don't recognize that is a possibility. But for those who do recognize it, it's not pretentious at all. And in fact, it's quite the opposite. It's like, it's a necessity at this point, to think along these lines of having a more unified perspective in alignment with this greater outer and inner reality.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, kind of like we talked about at the beginning of this, like when you think about it from that perspective, from that deep inner place of self, societal, and collective perception, you realize that, of course, people are destroying this world, themselves, everything, because they don't understand. They don't have the direct experience of the elements that unify us. To me, that's just pure insanity, because how can you, and the crazy thing about it is we are that. When you reel back all of these thought patterns, all of these beliefs, all of these things, you get to the base of your consciousness itself, where you are perceiving reality from a very basic sense. And in that is this unified force that we're talking about, this ability to feel connection to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, but stopping there isn't, it's just one thing. When you get to that point and you start to do that, that's where intuition comes in, because you can actually feel what it's like to be connected to things. You can start just feeling your connection to things around you, and that's how you do it, by developing that feeling. You develop empathy, compassion, all these virtues that we really kind of know are necessary to embody if we're going to help one another live in this world and create a better place. But it doesn't happen if we don't do it.
Right. And I think it has to come from a place where you're able to trust yourself. And I think that's a big issue, that people don't know how to trust themselves. We look outside for experts, outside for validation. People go to doctors because they're like, my toe hurts, doc, what's wrong? And you don't tell the doctor that you just stubbed it 2 days ago and you broke your toe or something silly. But you look outside yourself instead of realizing the truth is in here. Like, everything comes from inside. So when you can trust yourself and your own actions and your own patterns and your own feelings, then you can feel that connection and know that it's real. I think a lot of people do feel a connection, but they don't trust it because they don't trust themselves. So when you can trust yourselves, you can be like, I and that tree are the same. I and these cats are the same. I and the people in this other room are the same. We're all part of the same energy. Being destructive to them is being destructive to me. Being destructive to me is being destructive to them. So it's an amazing balance when you can reach it, and I think that there's more and more people that are trying to get there, and a lot of people are on the path, and I think it's amazing.
Yeah, it's, you just brought up a lot of good points, but it's like we really, really have to realize that this is a natural function of our own consciousness. It's not like something that we're trying to develop. I mean, we're developing to a degree, but it's a inherent function of ourselves, of our true self. And the reason why people don't trust that, and the reason why they're not aware of it to a much greater degree, is because we've been disempowered. We've been taught to follow the leader. Listen to this person, listen to that person, listen to this religion, listen to that. And there's so many different conflicting ideas that it makes it hard for an individual to trust any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're told, oh, you have to do this, you have to live in this world, and you have to, whatever part of the world you live in, everybody's got their cultural beliefs, this is what you have to do. Obviously, like, tribal cultures and indigenous cultures have a lifestyle much more in synchrony with reality. But for those of us living in civilized and industrialized worlds, which is crazy, it's most people seemingly at this point, to a greater or lesser degree, these are the people who really need to start questioning what's going on and finding a way to trust themselves and trust their own perception of reality. Because in a lot of ways, we came into this world on our own. We came through someone, but we came in on our own. It was us, unless we were twins or triplets, of course. But ultimately, we have the ability to perceive reality by ourselves alone. And if we don't take responsibility for developing that, then we're almost giving our power away. And a lot of people do that without even realizing it.
Yeah, we're taught to, do what your parents say, do what your teachers say, do what your religious leader says. Do this, do this, do this. Don't think, just obey. Do the thing. And I don't know if it's just the people that I follow on social media, but I'm seeing a lot more of trust yourself, listen to your intuition, connect with your higher guidance. Everyone has their own little spin on it, but it's all about do your own thing, use your own voice, use your creativity. Don't be stuck in a little hole, because you weren't made to be stuck in you already came out of a little hole to be here. So be bigger than a little hole.
Yeah, we don't realize that. The scary thing, I think, for most people is to realize that they actually are a leader. We all are leaders. Each and every one of us are a leader of our own life. Mm-hmm. But unless we take responsibility for being that inner leader and starting with just leading ourselves, then we're not a leader. We're not doing anything in this world except for giving that leadership over to somebody else.
Yeah, and there's always ways that you can follow other people. I follow people on social media. If someone knows more about a subject, I will follow them. Like, if I go foraging, I'm going to follow someone else because they know more about native plants than I do. I'm learning, but I'm going to follow. If someone wants to know a lot about nutrition, they can follow me. I am happy to lead them on that journey because, man, so everyone has their own subjects and their own passions where you follow where you want to go, where you guide other directions. It's, it is a balance.
Absolutely, well said. And it's not about, okay, I'm going to go sit in a cave and just tap into my inner power and then I'm going to go lead myself in the world. No, it's kind of what we were saying before. It's like finding this like desire to want to break out of these molds that we've kind of been pre-fitted into being. And as a result of doing that, you see doors open, things begin to happen, mm-hmm. and you begin to realize, whoa, I'm slowly but progressively becoming empowered. And to the degree that you commit to doing it is how the results will unfold in your life. The more you commit to doing it, the greater results you're going to get. It's so simple. It's actually, it may not always be easy, but it's such a simple process. And it's very common sense oriented. And a lot of people, they say common sense isn't so common. But a lot of the reason for that is because we're so caught up in how we're used to perceiving reality that we're not taking the time to step back and be more objective. So common sense really comes back quickly when we just stop, consider things, and really think about it and try to feel it. And that's where it develops. And then you're like, okay, I can make this decision, which will most likely take me down a road I don't want to go, or I can make this decision, which I actually feel is going to serve me best.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's thinking about those decisions and just sitting with the idea of that decision for a minute and see how it makes you feel. A lot of people, go to office jobs every day, and you can sit with the decision of, I'm going to apply for this promotion, and you can see how it feels. Or I'm going to apply for this other job at another company. Or I'm going to follow this creative venture that I've wanted to do since I was a kid. And you can just sit and see how it feels. And it might not be the right time to follow your kid dream. You might need to learn more things. You might need to be in a better position in life. But to feel it inside yourself, to feel what those decisions feel like, if it's a little scary and exciting, but you want to do it anyway, that's the one you go with. Not the, well, it's a smart choice because it'll be more money and it'll be more secure and it's still a short commute. That's like, if you have to justify it, that's the wrong decision. You have to feel it. You have to be like, this is terrifying and I really want to do it. There you go. Done. Sold.
yeah, absolutely. Well said. We gotta, at some point, I think a lot of people do realize that they have to face things that they're not really that excited about facing, and that they're maybe even outright completely scared to death of facing.
Mm-hmm.
But in facing those things to a degree, whether it's facing it fully or just facing it a little bit, that's where growth ensues. We literally grow as an individual, and the growth happens in our personal perception of reality, of the world.
Yeah. And everyone's process is different. If I, like, my process is I usually read something and I continue reading about it. I love to educate myself. So I'll read about something. If I get excited about it, I'll try it alone by myself. I'm an introvert, so I don't like people to watch my process. So, I'll practice it on my own, and then I'll be like, I think I'm ready to try this thing, and then I'll go do it in the real world. Whereas other people want to just dive face first day one. They'll spend thousands of dollars to go do this crazy different venture. And whether or not they succeed at it, they've done the thing. So fantastic. Everybody's process is going to be a little bit different. It always is a little challenging, but you got to do it. The important thing is to do the thing.
Do it and want to do it. And,
yes.
And recognize that it's going to serve you. It's going to help you. And, the other thing we didn't really fully touch upon is the need to at least put some effort in trying to connect with others. And you did mention it with teachers and stuff like that. Trying to connect with others who you feel are doing that as well, because they will support you in one way or another. And again, doors open. The more you pursue this, the more you intentionally try to develop this, the more you will intuitively know which doors are going to serve you best, which paths and which people are going to really help assist you in your personal growth.
Absolutely. And you and I had a short chat earlier about the law of attraction versus the law of creation. And I think that's an important distinction to make, because if you just sit on your couch and think about, I want to attract this life that I want. I want to be an artist. I want to be an author. You can think about it all you want. Thinking about it isn't going to get you where you want to be. Tell somebody about it. Maybe write something. Put yourself out there in any fashion, and the right people will find you. I was on this one media site where I post up a lot of writing work, and I found the exact right people that I wanted to work with. And all I did was post up myself, what I do, and these people found me, and we created relationships, and it's fantastic. I don't work there anymore. I don't need to, because I found my people. So it doesn't matter what venue you choose. You have to try something, and sometimes you have to try dozens of things before you find the right one. But you have to keep doing it, because it will find you. 'Cause, once you mentioned it yourself, whenever you make the decision to want whatever it is, whenever you start on your process of self-discovery, it's going to happen. You kind of can't stop it. Those doors will open, and people will be screaming at you from inside those doors, hey, pay attention, look at this direction, these things. it's almost a flood, and we didn't talk about this yet, but I think it can be overwhelming sometimes because it can make your life really busy and really confusing because you're suddenly inundated with so much newness. You know, if you're very conditioned, if you're very used to one way of living from a very long time and suddenly all these doors open, it might be a little scary. So you, not to scare anyone off, but you just have to be prepared that you might have a little chaos for a minute.
Yeah, and well, chaos is a natural part of reality. That's the thing. It's like, again, we have to all definitely come to terms with there's going to be things that we don't really want to face, but that we ultimately know we have to. So the thing isn't to like run and hide and go hide out and say I'm not going to face it. It's to face it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's, again, jumping full on into it, which maybe isn't always the best thing, or just starting to progressively work towards facing it. Either way, you're going to be breaking out of this shell. You're going to be, expanding yourself, your perception of reality, your life force. And, that's where good things begin to happen. Not necessarily good. I'm going to go back to something you said. It's good. It's absolutely good, but it's growth, and it isn't good or bad, which is kind of a lead into what I was going to talk about is part of why it's scary for people is we have such a conflicting and diametrically opposed view of reality, and that comes from, so many people I know work these brutal work weeks, like day after day, working like a slave in a lot of ways for somebody else. Yet when it comes to doing things for themselves, they have this exact opposite perspective of like, oh, I'm just going to think about something and make it happen because we have this like quick fix reality. So it's like, wait a minute, you're going to work your ass off for whatever you're doing, but when it comes to working your ass off for yourself, you just want to sit back and let it happen? No.
Mm-mm.
No. And so part of why it can be very overwhelming to people is because that shift of balance, that shift of, kind of being disempowered to being empowered is so vast, seemingly in the beginning, that it can be a little bit rough. But it really isn't that way. It's just we've been conditioned, mostly unconsciously, to perceive it in that way. So again, it's just taking steps towards ultimately empowering yourself and to commit to taking those steps. And as long as you continue to do that, then results just naturally come out of it. Of course they're gonna. But success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So you have to realize within you that what you're trying to achieve, whatever growth or whatever perception or whatever feeling or, from a more practical level, like whatever you're trying to do in your day-to-day life for your family, your kids, or whoever, it's worth it. It's a worthy ideal, and it's worthy of your time and your attention to give to it and to reap some results, harvest some results from it.
So let's get back to that practical idea. When people are going through their day-to-day life, what are some things that we can be doing? Like, what can we practice throughout the day? And I have a brilliant idea, I think it's brilliant, of whenever day-to-day stress is like, my boss is on my back, I have to shuffle the kids everywhere, I still have to make dinner, the house is a mess. Those days where you're just like, laugh. Whenever you're so completely, ridiculously stressed out, it doesn't matter where you are or who's around you. Laugh hysterically. Don't even try to control yourself and just let it out, because everything is funny. Everything will work itself out. Everything really is fine. But that laughter, in an energetic perspective, energy loves motion, and there is nothing that moves energy faster than laughter. It brings joy, it brings happiness, it's creativity. It moves the energy in all kinds of ways. From a physiological perspective, laughter completely changes your hormonal profile. So it reduces the cortisol, it reduces your adrenaline, it increases dopamine and serotonin. So, practically and energetically, everything just kind of goes, and you can come with a fresh perspective. And nothing seems quite as crazy as it was a couple minutes ago.
Love it. It's so simple, right? And what you're saying, it's like, just make a choice. And that's that people don't realize they have a choice to respond or react to something in a way that's beneficial. But where most people don't. They feel like a victim, and we're kind of trained to feel like this perpetual victim. The other thing is too, it's funny, smile. Start my internal love engine. That's what just smiling. Like, even if you can't laugh out loud at work, whatever, make a choice to smile and
Hmm.
just become aware of how it feels to do that. Because, we have to, at some degree, take responsibility for whatever circumstances we're dealing with at this moment, because we're not victims. We are victims as long as we don't take responsibility, but we're the ones that are creating the victimization. We don't realize it. Sure, there's exceptions and different people have different ideas about it. But when you really, really look at the fact that, regardless of how brutal things can be, like with the Holocaust, if anybody ever read any Viktor Frankl's work, Man's Search for Meaning, these people were facing things that most people don't face. And in doing that, most people didn't. They struggled and they suffered and they really suffered. But some people made a choice of how they would react to it. And they found a deep inner peace that allowed them to transcend the confines of such a brutal reality. And, that's an extreme case. If they can do it in those situations, and I'm sure lots of other people have in many other different extreme types of situations, then why can't we do it in our cushy 9 to 5 workplace and our big fat cars and all that, like, we have it made here. I mean, we don't even realize, like, these Western cultures. And so, yeah.
If you ever want to see your external reality mirror your internal reality, smile at someone.
Mm.
Because how often do you smile at someone and they don't smile back? Like, usually you'll get another smile. Sometimes you'll get a, huh? Who's behind me? But usually, like, someone will smile back. I love doing that in daily life. I just smile at everyone. And, like, it makes me happier. It makes them happier. It makes for better interactions. Because who wants to talk to someone who's like, Like, I don't want to talk to that person. But if somebody's smiling at me, hey, what's up? How's your day? What are you doing?
It's universal language, right?
It is.
But it's funny because we've even been taught to, if you see somebody smiling, get away from that person. There's something wrong with them.
Oh, what are they doing? They must be up to something. That's trouble.
But we know. The truth has a certain ring to it. There's an air of genuine realness if somebody wants to just pay attention to it,
Yeah, you gotta feel it. You gotta trust yourself. So what other practical steps would you have to advise someone who's looking to improve their intuition on building that trust and trying to get more in touch with reality?
Well, back to what I was saying before, from under this kind of idea that we're stuck in a mental kind of prison or a mental jail of our own creation, again, it's back to expanding the inner and outer edges of your thought process. I personally, like, whenever things get crazy or I feel caught up in some moment that I don't want to be in the very near and immediate world around me, I just start to expand my mind and consider what is beyond that. What are people doing in the next town, or, what's going on in another state, what's going on in the country. I try to think about what's going on in the oceans. This human drama is playing out right around me, and, oh, it's so this or that and the other thing. Meanwhile, there's blue whales swimming out in the ocean somewhere that are the largest animals that have ever existed on this planet, and they're there right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's just thinking of something like that is like, whoa, I just transported myself out of whatever I'm dealing with now and considered something that is really amazing when you think about it. That's the miracle of it. To even beyond that, I'm a very kind of cosmic person. I like to consider things going on in space, and that brings me a tremendous amount of deep peace, and it gets me out of my head. Same thing, maybe somebody doesn't want to get so far out there. You can go in there, just considering that your heart is beating. Feel that. Feel what it's like to feel your heart beat, and realize the miracle of it. Your lungs are breathing. Your food is digesting. All these different functions are happening in your body, and it's miraculous. There's literally energy, electricity being created by the brain and sent through the spinal column throughout our body. That is insane when you think about it. Not insane in a good way. That is miraculous. Our bodies are creating electricity. What? Like,
Hmm.
really? So think of things in those terms. If my body is creating some form of electricity, then there must be an aspect to the way I perceive reality that's also electrical in nature. To me, that brings a great sense of peace and awareness because there is reality in that, and there's tremendous reality in it, and I can connect to it by choosing to. So that's
Yep.
one thing I would say about it.
One of the things I like to do is I like to meditate, but sometimes if I really need to focus, I meditate on my cells.
Mm.
I talk to my mitochondria. I look at how long my telomeres are. I take a look at the little spirals and clumps of DNA in the nucleus. You know, I'm very in. Like that's how I first learned to focus, was by looking in, because everything out there is the same as everything in here. And to me, this is tactile. I'm here. I can feel this. I can prove this exists by poking it. So I think, what is the tiniest piece of me? How am I moving? How is all this autonomously going on without my conscious control? It's a great vessel. This is my carrier. You know, it's the tool I use to experience reality. So having a few minutes to focus on that really centers me and really reminds me that this, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it's not worth getting worked up or angry about. Like, we can experience whatever we choose to experience. You can be having a horrible day, like everything could be going wrong, but you can choose how you react to it. You can be like, oh, well, it could have been worse this way. Oh, well, there's still whales in the ocean. My mitochondria are still making energy. You know, there's a million different things that you could say are still good. You know, because there's always alternatives, there's always choices, and everything is a choice. I wanna wear one of those sandwich boards around all the time that says everything is a choice. Just to remind people, because a lot of the times they don't think there is. You know, oh, I have to go to work today. I don't have any sick days left. You still don't have to go into work today. You know, you could choose to stay home and take a bunch of vitamin C and garlic. You know, there's all kinds of other alternatives when people say I don't have a choice. You know, get creative.
Yeah.
It's not just one path.
No, and even if somebody is like, well, I can't do that, or you can choose at the very, very fundamental base root of it all how you react to whatever situation you're in, even if you
Mm-hmm.
don't like being in it.
Yeah, and
You know?
that's I think one of the most important points. Even if you are being victimized, even if you're a scapegoat, even if your day is awful, if someone ran into your car, whatever it happens to be, you can choose your attitude, you can choose your reactions, and you can choose how you behave. Sure, things suck sometimes, but what are you going to do with it?
Well, the beauty of that is what a lot of people may not realize is that in that moment of just making that choice, suddenly, even if you're not aware of it at that moment in time, you have already taken really powerful steps to reverse the very same process that is kind of boxing you in. And so by making that choice and working to continue making choices that support that new, expanded, stepping out of the box way of thinking, then that process is supported by something much greater than the way things appear to be. And you mentioned something, it's not that this isn't real, it's not Maya illusion and all that. Like, it's not that this isn't real. This is real. It's just the whole thing with Maya and perceiving reality as illusion is that there's something way more real than this. And when we learn how to empower ourselves through our choices, through the way we feel, then we become much more aware of what it is that is more real than this appears to be. And when that happens, that's when things really, really start to develop, both
Mm-hmm.
personally, and you become empowered in a way where you can start to help others do that.
Absolutely.
And we're all way closer to it than we really have any idea about.
Absolutely. It just starts with looking. So do you have any final notes for our viewers?
Um, it's going to go on and on. I think we're just going to keep talking and getting all this stuff out, and there's lots of different topics and things that we're going to go into. So, yeah, I mean, the one thing is it's not, and I just heard somebody say this, it's not a goal, it's a journey. And so this stuff that we're talking about goes on forever. This isn't like, okay, I'm going to make all these decisions, I'm going to have this great life, and then I'm going to reach this plateau. You know,
No.
what happens when you get to the top of the mountain? You step off, grow wings, and you find another way to fly. You find another way to develop. So everything keeps going infinitely.
Yep.
It's just realize that you can do it from a place of empowerment or of victimization.
Mhm.
That's ultimately it.
Yeah. It's your life. Choose how to live it.
All right. Anything else that you'd like to throw in, or?
No, I was actually just going to say that it's a journey. It's all a process. There's no one point. There's no like, okay, you've reached enlightenment. Now you can sit cross-legged on a mountain for the rest of eternity. That's no fun. You're here to have fun. So keep having fun. Keep learning about yourself and reality. Keep being curious. Push your own boundaries and do new stuff.
Push other people's boundaries.
Yeah, why not?
Because and help somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Help someone, help something, help,
Be kind. Like, going back to the car crash scenario, okay, so your car's been wrecked. You might meet a really nice car repair guy. You might, you never know what's going to happen. Maybe the delay set somebody back in traffic from going someplace they really didn't want to be. You never know what other implications are going to happen from your actions. So be true to yourself. If you be truly who you are, magic happens for you and everybody else.
Yeah.
Cheesy as it is.
Well, and it's reality. Reality happens. Just, are we in alignment with reality or not? Because most of us aren't. Our species is not really in alignment with the greater reality. We're in alignment with this really limited human perception of reality, but that's not who and what we are. And we're destroying this world because we're not living in alignment with reality. But we can totally reverse this process if we want.
Yep. Choose it.
Choose it. Perfect.
All right, guys. It has been great talking to all of you. This has been a great conversation, and we will talk to you again soon. Again, I'm Heather Makar.
Seth Lee Przansky.
And it's been great. Talk to you later.